We are so honored today to have a panel of CNPs to share their experiences and thoughts about the past, the present, and the future. Susan Tomlinson Schmidt, Advanced CNP and past president of the Nonprofit Leadership Alliance, will serve as the moderator. Susan, welcome.
Well, thank you, Dorothy. It's just amazing to be back. I feel like it's homecoming in so many ways. It's spent more of my professional life with the Nonprofit Leadership Alliance than I have without. So I'm thrilled to be back and celebrating the 75th anniversary, and so proud of the team and all the work you've done to put this together and to make sure we know about our organization's bright history. So today we're going to celebrate several CNPs. We're celebrating all of our CNPs, but here's a few that our team has put together to give us a little bit more in-depth conversation about their journey in the nonprofit sector. I want to welcome Diana Duque, Debbie Espinoza, Michael McGrath, and Byron Garrett. And instead of me giving what I'm sure would not be as exciting of an introduction, I'm going to start by asking everyone to tell us your name, your position, how you earned your CNP, and what drew you to the nonprofit sector. So if you had an aha moment in your career explanation, how'd you end up here? And I'll kick us off. So I earned my CNP while I was getting my master's degree in public administration with a concentration in nonprofit administration at the University of Memphis. Go Tigers for all the Memphis grads out there. And fun fact, Dorothy Norris Terrell was my primary professor. So we go way back and have had years of working together that have just been fabulous. So you never know, you may bump into your professors again one day. That's a lesson to all of us. My aha moment, I had graduated my undergrad degree and moved from Memphis to New York and had a really hard time finding a job. I was fish out of water. Not everybody clearly understood me because of my Southern accent. I didn't have a network in New York, and I had a very liberal arts degree. So finding a job was a big struggle. And my mom is the one who said to me, I think you just need to get out and volunteer and meet people. And in doing that, I really fell in love with the nonprofit sector and serving my community in that way. So then it was my sister, and I should say my mom and my sister are both CNPs now. It was my sister who said, you don't have to just volunteer. You could actually get a job in one of these organizations. So I started looking around how to prepare myself for those careers. And that's how I ended up in the NPA program. So that was my aha moment. It was through not really knowing what I wanted to do, but falling in love with volunteerism of lots of sorts. So we'll just go around. Diana, what was your aha moment?
Yeah, so for me, my name is Diana Duque. I am the Fund Development Coordinator at Collaborative for Children in Houston, Texas. And I earned my credential through the University of Houston and the program of, the Nonprofit Leadership Alliance. And I was actually not pursuing or didn't know anything about nonprofits. I was actually pursuing a degree in business administration because I was working at a law firm at the time, and I had been there maybe 9 years. And I said, okay, I think this is what I want. This is what I'm going to do. And it was my last semester of finishing my associates when I started volunteering at my church. We started doing a summer food program. So it was I was doing the administration work of the program, going to the trainings, making sure that the program was running, smoothly, and helping and getting volunteers. And that's when I started hearing the word nonprofit and what my pastor had, envisioned for the community. And I was like, what are you talking about? Because I have no idea. And as he was sharing his vision, I was like, that sounds very interesting. And of course, as a believer, I prayed and I asked God for direction. And I'm like, I'm at the end of my semester for business or for my associates. What do I do? And I started researching, praying, and asking for direction. And I found the Nonprofit Leadership Alliance at the University of Houston. So I finished my degree while working at the law firm. And now I'm able to combine both my experience at the law firm and now working at a nonprofit.
That's wonderful. I love these journeys. So many of our journeys are, we wander into it the way you and I did, Diana. So Debbie, tell us about your journey and start with where you are now, your organization.
Sure, absolutely. Good morning, everybody. It's so nice to have everybody here today, and I cannot believe we have almost 150 people joining us. This is fantastic. So happy CNP Day. My name is Debbie Espinoza. I am the president and CEO of Find Food Bank, which is the regional food bank in the Feeding America system that serves the southeastern sector of the state of California, aka Palm Springs, or for those music lovers, the Coachella Valley area, which we all love, the Coachella Music Festival coming up here in a couple of months now. For me, my journey has been very interesting with a couple of aha moments along the way. I can tell you that growing up in the Campfire Boys and Girls kind of youth development sector, being a Bluebird, if anybody remembers those from way back when, I've had a lot of great mentorship that has exposed me and introduced me to the meaning of what human compassion is and community service from a very young age. But my biggest aha moment was when I was about 17 years old, 16 years old, and it was actually my church group that took us to a homeless shelter. And we were very active in serving food to people that were homeless. They required us to wear clothes that we hadn't worn in 2 years. You know, if you can imagine being a teenager, we had these, like, everybody had to be in style, but they're like, no, you need to find something in your closet that you haven't worn in 2 years, because we want to make sure that you understand the meaning of what it means to be able to only use the things that you have access to, but not necessarily want to. And when we went in there and we started working with the people and we started talking with the people, it opened up my eyes to this whole new world about how we as people can make sure that we can serve those that are equal as people, but may need a little extra help in order to be able to achieve and be able to flourish and thrive in this world. And so for me, I started to engage much more into the nonprofit sector at that point in time, serving on boards of directors for Campfire Boys and Girls as a youth. And then people from American Humanics, because Campfire was one of the organizations there, said that, hey, did you know that you could actually have a degree and career in this field? So you can actually be part of that 2% in the world that actually really loves what they're doing as a profession. And I never looked back. So I went to Missouri Valley College as an undergrad. I ended up getting my degree from, oh, you can't see it, Rockhurst College, now Rockhurst University, and have served in the nonprofit sector ever since then. YMCA is Boys and Girls, YMCA is Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, Campfire Boys and Girls. And now in the Feeding America system for the last decade, feeding as many people as I possibly can.
That's awesome. It's like you went down our list of founding partners and you're just going to work at all of them. You're on a mission to work at every NLA partner. So great story. I've heard you tell that story before, and I've never heard the exercise about 2-year-old clothes. I love that. That's such a powerful way to help us experience how our clients feel. Michael, how about we sling it to you?
Hey, great. Thank you so much for having me this morning. So my name is Michael McGrath. I'm currently the Director, Office of the President at Campaign Legal Center. And my journey to nonprofit pretty much started off in the for-profit sector. I was working in residential commercial real estate area. And after about 10 years of that, I didn't really see much of an impact that we were having in our community besides how much we were bringing back to our investors. And while that was fine and dandy, I wanted to have work that was more impactful to the community around me and that wasn't necessarily based solely on quarterly profit reports. So I left that job, ended up at Volunteers of America. There was an opportunity for me to earn my CNP credit through that organization. And since then, my career in nonprofit has just taken off. I've been chief of staff with the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund, and now here I am with the Campaign Legal Center. So it's been very helpful as far as educating me in what I needed to know about the various aspects and teaching me what I didn't know about the nonprofit sector and making it possible for me to be able to have a very fulfilling and wonderful career.
That's awesome. We have lots of sector shifters in our group of CNP alumni. It's the perfect credential to add to any degree to help you make that shift. So you represent a big segment here, Michael. We're glad that you told your story.
Thank you.
Byron.
Greetings, everyone, and happy CNP Day. Super excited to participate and join you. As you see on the screen, I'm Byron Garrett. I serve as Executive Vice President for United Way Worldwide. United Way is global, in case you didn't know that, 1,000 plus United Ways domestically, and then we operate in 37 countries around the globe, headquartered out of Alexandria, Virginia. I earned my credential in the old school program, American Humanics, back at High Point University. At the time, it was High Point College, so any Panthers that happen to be on, shout out to the purple. I'm representing my colors today. And when we talk about this whole idea of shifting sectors, I think my career in this particular credential prepared me for that. Right now, as I mentioned, I'm at United Way Worldwide, but once upon a time, I was CEO of the National PTA, the Parent Teacher Association. I did a stint as an education policy advisor to the governor of Arizona and then led 2 different initiatives, one for President Bush and one for President Obama, and also spent time in corporate with NBC Universal and Microsoft. And so the aha for me was, regardless of all those sectors, I always recall both my parents. My dad's a United Methodist pastor in the Carolinas, and my mom has always been a human services professional, specifically a case manager. And at the nice age of 78, still has a caseload that she goes and visits every single month. And so that notion that you've got to leave the world better than you found it, and you have a responsibility to help those who may not even be able to help themselves. So I've always felt that a calling and responsibility, and it's allowed me to navigate and traverse various sectors to where I am today. So excited to join everyone. And thank you all for being involved in the program.
I love that sentiment. It's so true that the CNP is perfect for targeting the nonprofit sector, but the leadership, so many of the skills we learn, we use. And I use some of the things I learned in dealing with my children, right? Like we even use them in our homes. So such a broad, that's what I've always loved about the CNP is we're generalists. So we're not going to pigeonhole you into any one subsector, but we support all of them. And that's really the beauty of our network. And we're a representative of it, this group here. So during your career, I have had tons of fun things that I got to do because of my career in the nonprofit sector. I'm not sure everybody thinks of it as fun, but it can be great fun. I'm going to share mine. One of the most fun things I've ever done was I got to visit the Pentagon. And it was because we were broadening the CNP to try to incorporate more exiting military professionals and streamline them into nonprofit work. I have met very high up, like lieutenant colonels who haven't been to the Pentagon. So I felt like that was super special and something I never would have been able to do if it wasn't for our work on the nonprofit workforce. So there's my fun story. Let's go backwards. Byron.
I've got a couple, but I'll make them concise. And so once upon a time when I was CEO of National PTA, the famed late, great Dr. Maya Angelou, who was one of my mentors from undergrad at Wake Forest University when I was at High Point, was our inaugural speaker and did the inauguration when I became CEO. Another great example was, I mentioned NBC earlier. I was leading Education Nation for NBC News, which was a national televised program and platform to get the public to think about education. And in that setting, we convened the largest gathering of governors outside of the National Governors Association, having 30 of them on stage for a panel discussion that was televised at 30 Rock. And then I'll give one as late as a few months ago. Some of you may see that there is a film out that was #1 last week, and hopefully it will be again, called One Love, that chronicles the story of Bob Marley. I got to serve as a consultant on the film and partner with the Marley Foundation down in Kingston, Jamaica, to coordinate a series of nonprofit activities to do development work specifically in Trenchtown, which is considered the hood, the barrio, the ghetto, if you will, of Jamaica, and to bring together all of the totality of my experiences and connections, from getting books from Scholastic, where I'm a kids book author, but also getting Paramount as the funding company to redo the entire playground and surface and build security booths on campus while we're there. Because my agreement was, if I come down here and partner with you on this objective, if you're not leaving this community better than you found it beyond employing folks, then we've done the entire community a disservice. So you got a $100 million budget for this film. How much of that is left behind, and how can the neediest citizens, which are children, benefit from that? So those are just a couple cool experiences that I've had.
Wow, that is pretty cool. Let's see, Michael, what is something fun you've done in your nonprofit career?
So I'm gonna bounce off what Byron said and go with two of them. So the first one's kind of the largest scale activity that I did when I took my role as chief of staff with the nonprofit, with the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund. It was 6 weeks away from the annual candlelight vigil that we have for fallen officers. Now, for those of you who don't know, that is a 10,000 plus person event on the National Mall with dignitaries from all of the major law enforcement offices throughout the government, like the FBI, the CIA, TS, like all of them are all present. So it was very much trial by fire, kind of on ramp into being part of that organization and getting all of that together. But having that magical moment when I was backstage and got to see all of the families who'd lost their loved ones in the line of duty, and seeing that we'd created this moment for them to be able to grieve and have that solemn togetherness, that really made me feel that I was in the right moment, in the right space at the right time to be able to do this for them. Then another time that was a little bit less glamorous, a group, when I was with Volunteers of America, a group of us were meeting together for a dinner in Texas, and we ended up having our waitress was one of our drug rehab clients, and hearing her story as what the organization I was with was able to do for her and how she was able to turn her life around on that micro individual level just left my soul full for weeks after that.
I love the big and small of your two stories, right? Just this huge thing that we can do very publicly down to just a personal encounter to somebody whose life we've changed. That's amazing, Michael. Debbie, how about you? You've covered a lot of miles in the nonprofit sector.
Yeah, it reminds us of how old we're getting, right? But in the 30 years, I think, that I've been in this sector, there's two that stand out for me right now, although there's been many, large and small. And I think one of the beauties of the work that we do is that when we think about the fun things, a lot of it is tied to some of those smaller moments that Michael was just mentioning with, being able to see programs come full circle, right? So I think the first one that I want to talk about is actually when I was younger, when I was just entering into the nonprofit space and I was at Rockhurst College. I was doing a lot of work nationally with Campfire Boys and Girls, now Campfire USA. And we decided to, at that point in time, it was in the it was in the mid to late 90s when HIV/AIDS education was first starting to come into the nonprofit sector, because it was controversial at that time. And there had to be leaders in the space to make sure that we could talk about it for all ages. And so Campfire was one of the ones that took the lead. And we did a summer youth conference with over 400 attendees in Washington, D.C. And I was on the Youth Advisory Council at that time in my early 20s. And I was able to meet the Surgeon General, the first African-American woman, Jocelyn Elders at that time, to be able to take us through the CDC on a private tour and learn about HIV/AIDS education from what they were doing at it scientifically from the US government. And then we led a march down the mall, and I was able to give a keynote speech, since I was the chair of that time, on the Lincoln Memorial steps, right in front of where Martin Luther King stood. And so for me, that's always going to be one of the most fun and momentous occasions that I will ever have in my life. And it propels me into some of the work that I do now with regards to the big thinking. So recently, my organization partnered with the state of California on a $1.8 million grant to launch food pantries in the community college space. We beat out many large universities in the state of California for this grant by the state government. And the pilot was so successful in our local community with 2 of them that we ended up securing another $3 million to launch community college and university pantries at all of the colleges and universities in our sector from a private foundation. So it's going to be fun seeing the program grow. But what's really fun was that people actually saw that the commitment and belief of what it means to end hunger in various ways was picked up by other people to be able to join that belief and really engage in the work with us. So those are my 2.
That's beautiful. Beautiful. I love both of them. Okay, Diana, round us out. Tell us something fun you've done.
Well, for me, it's interesting because it connects from where I kind of was finishing with my school, and I got the opportunity of being an ambassador for NLA. You know, I was the ambassador and one of the ambassadors. So being behind the scenes of how NLA was putting together the AMI conference in 2020. So that was amazing to see. But little did I know that, you know, it was going to help me and prepare me for events that were going to be happening now in my organization. And one of those is when I joined Collaborative for Children, we were preparing to unveil our mobile learning unit. So it goes into the communities. It's a bus on wheels, but it goes into the communities. It's a no cost to parents and families who cannot afford daycare. And it's really the education that is given to the parents. It connects and supports them in how they can help their children get ready for kindergarten. And now we're working on a STEAM theme event. Think of it as a science fair for the littlest minds, 3 to 6 years old. And we are getting ready for that. That's going to be happening in April. But it's amazing to just know and see firsthand of these community events being able to support the community and be able to give an education to the earliest and youngest minds here in Houston, prepare them for the 21st century. And as a single mom many years ago, my daughter didn't qualify for an early childhood education, but fortunately she was accepted, and now I see the fruits of what she was given, because the education that she received at just 3 years old helped her into the public school. So definitely support and believe in early childhood education, just because I saw it firsthand of how much it helped me as a single mother and helped my daughter as well.
I love it. So I didn't say this, but I'm now with the University of Missouri, Kansas City. And Diana, I'm in the Early Childhood Innovation Center. So I'm seeing this work firsthand, and I'm so with you. I think that it's just an amazing time to be impactful in a child's life. So yay for early childhood people. So we talked about having fun, which hopefully most days are having fun, but there are lots of obstacles in our work too. I mean, that's just part of the job, right? So let's share some obstacles that we've had to overcome in our work life and how we address them, and how, as leaders, we approach obstacles and challenges in our work. Debbie, why don't you go first this time?
Well, you know, it's funny because the obstacles that we had when we were younger, all of a sudden we start realizing became the opportunities that allow us to be able to move through the obstacles that we have today. And so I always welcome obstacles and challenges because it allows me to grow as a leader. I think most recently, some of the obstacles and challenges, and talking from a very personal standpoint, I was diagnosed with stage 2 breast cancer back in June of 2023. And I am continuing my job as a CEO as I move through the medical procedures that I've needed to go through, because I had to make a choice as to whether or not I would take medical leave or continue to work as best that I can and take care of the community that we carry on our shoulders as a regional food bank. There's still a lot of people that are in need. So I made the choice, along with my board of directors, who've been an absolute wonderful support to me, to learn the true meaning of work-life balance. And so for all, I think what's interesting is that we are, the majority of us, so gung-ho about making sure that we think about others before ourselves. And I have always been like that. Currently I serve as the immediate past chair of the National Council of Feeding America. And I just finished up my term on the National Board of Directors as Feeding America as one of the CEO representatives, serving for, for me, it's a milestone, right? It's the largest nonprofit in the United States by Forbes over the last 2 years. It's the largest hunger relief organization, NPO or NGO, in the world. And so to serve on the board at the time that you find out what your diagnosis is, you have to start understanding what it means to balance. I think the beauty is that as we go through our career and we look at what work-life balance is, it makes us realize what are our priorities, both for ourselves and for the people that we take care of. And for me, the thoughtfulness around it is that it made me a better leader because it helped me understand how to rely on people more as opposed to relying on myself. The amount of support and amount of trust that my executive leadership team and I have built over these years is probably more in the last 9 months than it had been in the 6 years that I had been at the food bank. And so for me, when you look at the personal and the professional and you look at obstacles and challenges, we're all going to have them throughout our career. We're all going to find those times when we're battling being a single mom and dealing with children and working in this profession that we absolutely love and have passion. And how do you combine those two things together in order to not just make your professional world better, but also your personal world better too at the same time? So there are other challenges that I could have talked to with regards to professionalism. We could have talked about COVID and pivoting and all of those kinds of things. You can read about articles, but for me, I think the biggest learning lesson and overcoming challenges is how do you balance taking care of yourself and taking care of a community and taking care of your organization in order to make sure that everybody is taken care of. Like the Dalai Lama said, if you have compassion, you don't have compassion for the world unless you have compassion for yourself too as well, because you're part of that world. So finding that balance will be important for all of you.
That's amazing. I mean, that's just amazing that what you learned was to accept help and lead through that. I think it's just one of the most beautiful things I've heard in a long time, Debbie. Thank you for sharing such a personal obstacle. Diana, do you have something on your mind about obstacles and what you want to share?
Yes, thank you, Debbie, for sharing that. I've experienced it on the other side, helping my husband recently through his health issues. But me personally, I feel like I'm a quick learner, and I've been given challenges where I need to learn something to improve and help my organization. And because I love community and I love the people around me, I'm also part of a leadership team at my church that we create events and lead life groups for women and for single moms. And so it's amazing to come together. And I love that you mentioned, Debbie, the work-life balance and having that, and how do you navigate that? So for me, it's been a challenge to learn where what's my priority, and at the same time be able to give what I have learned, because I learned so much in my 12 years at a law firm, to be able to help my organization now create policies and procedures that our team didn't have, or that the organization didn't have. So it's definitely been a crucial and important opportunity to help from what I've learned throughout the years of working at a law firm and being able to volunteer in my church and working in my, as a fund development coordinator. So putting everything together and helping not just myself, but helping and being able to connect just with other people who I am able to meet and come across.
That's connection. Again, it's very, very similar lesson at the end of the day. Michael, how about an obstacle that you remember well?
So it's not so much memory as it's an obstacle that I'm going through currently. So there's an NGO out of Chile called Nos Buscamos that I'm involved with. During the Pinochet regime in Chile during the late 70s and 80s, there were thousands and thousands of illegal adoptions that happened that took children from their mothers and sent them around the world. Some mothers gave their babies up willingly for adoption. Other mothers were told that their babies had died and their babies were sold for profit by the Catholic Church and the Chilean government. Well, they as a result of that, they've been helping people worldwide to find their birth families and make those reconnections with their Chilean heritage and their roots. One of the issues that they've come up against is that they are trying to fundraise in the United States and they lost their 501 status. And so I am currently helping them to get that reestablished. However, that is completely far outside my area of expertise and bailiwick. But having been in the nonprofit sector for as long as I have, and for having created and built the network that I have the resources and the people that I can go to and the people that I can ask for that help. And I'm finding that people are more than willing to help and to pitch in to help bring this organization back to a place where it can actually start fundraising and start doing more good than it currently can with the limited funds that it has.
Wonderful. So we're hearing the theme here, right? Connection and networks that you build, and I think being a part of a nationwide network as you're learning early in your career, knowing how important that connection is. It's one of the reasons that it's a big difference to get a CNP rather than a degree that's on your campus. There's a difference there. You have a much broader network, and learning to leverage that is something you kind of all three have talked about. So Byron, are you gonna keep this
If I could add real quick,
Yeah, please do.
It's completely impossible for any single one of us to know absolutely everything. You have to ask for help. Like any leader, you have to ask for help.
And having a trusted network is so critical. Someone that you can put a message on the discussion board and know that they have a similar experience and come from a place of knowledge and shared learning. So that's great. It's almost like we picked you to tell these stories.
Something like that.
Something like that. What about you, Byron?
I would just say, adding to the discussion, I think that notion of what Debbie hit on earlier, that personal challenges, work-life balance, no matter how you're aspiring and how hard you're charging to take care of other folks in the space, which is what drew you to the human services field in most cases, you can't neglect home and neglect yourself. And so my example would be, very early on, my eldest brother was incarcerated, received a 20-year sentence in the state of Georgia, but also had a wife and 2 young boys. And we made the conscious decision as a family that it would be best for them to relocate from South Carolina, where they were, to defy all the stereotypes and statistics, to move to Arizona, where I was living at the time, because we thought I was better positioned than the rest of the family to help navigate. And so this notion of, I've got this great career that's like really moving up. I'm in the middle of grad school. I started a doctoral program, doing all these cool things. And then you realize it's awesome to help the entire country, state, community, all of those things. But if you do that at the expense of what's happening in your immediate family or home environment, what really say you about that long term? And so just that notion of that was a personal challenge that I had to really decide and make some conscious decisions around what was most important, and that all of them are priorities. They all on any given day seem equally important, but you are the driver and the key decider at the end of the day. I always hearken to the quote by Margaret Mead when she said, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has." And I'm always reminded of that in whatever role I have, that this work that we're doing is incredibly taxing. Some of us are not always built and ready for the moment, but we have to rise to the occasion. That's an expectation, but you also can't do it at the expense of yourself. And the last thing I would say that's related to that is that you don't get the luxury of riding around on an empty tank, because typically driven folks like us, when people need us, they need us most, and we don't want you to be out of gas. So make sure you still take time out for yourself.
I love that so much. And I love these threads. I was recently at a conference and the speaker said, our clients' cups are full to the extent that our nonprofit professionals' cups are overflowing. And isn't that the truth? Like, you have to have an overflowing cup to be able to fill someone else's. So definitely the sentiment among all of you. And I think something special about the nonprofit sector for me is, instead of creating a work-life boundary, I've always thought of it, I combine my work and life. So I bring my kids to volunteer with me. My mom has been to every AMI for the last 10 years. My husband would travel with me a lot. I think for me, that really worked, so that there was a blurred boundary, and I never felt like I couldn't, I never felt like I was balancing. I felt like I was combining. Now, I have a very good friend who says that doesn't work for her, but I think the nonprofit sector lends itself to us, to that. We're so family oriented, and our values allow for that. Nobody's going to scold you for bringing your dog to work, unless, actually, that wasn't a good example. But anyway, you understand what I'm saying. I think we have this opportunity to combine, and that's always been my strategy. So I love what you're sharing. I'm enjoying being a panelist, but I kind of wish I was just listening, because you have fabulous stories. So we have a few more minutes, but let's do one more round and talk about, share your thoughts on some of the critical things we're facing in the sector, and what you think the future is for the nonprofit sector. What should we be thinking about? What should we be looking ahead toward? And where you are as leaders in our sector, as leaders in our network, where's your mind today, and what are the things you're thinking about? I'm supposed to call on somebody, I guess. Who hasn't started? Diana, have you started? Let's start with you, Diana. Oh, you started.
I think Michael hasn't.
Yep. You want to start, Michael, or you want me to start?
Yeah, Michael, you start. I'm sorry. I got so wrapped up in my thoughts.
No, it's absolutely fine. Absolutely fine. So critical factors for influencing the nonprofit sector, I think, is pretty much going to be like a constant, and that's going to be the economy. If the population is doing well financially, then they're going to have the ability to be a little bit more generous with their giving. But as the economy becomes worse and worse, then the need for our services and for the kinds of things that we provide becomes greater and greater. So there's going to be that consistent tension with the economy on a constant basis. One of my hopes for the future of the nonprofit sector is that we eventually find parity with the for-profit professionals as far as compensation goes, that the work that we perform on a daily basis is professional level expertise work that needs to be compensated in a way that is on level with the kind of education and the kind of energy and value that we put into it. Too many people still see nonprofit professionals as people who are volunteers or doing this for fun, or, you know, should more of the money should be going to the programs, but we still need to be able to live a life, and we also still need to be able to attract the greatest and most brightest individuals. So, you know, those are the two areas as far as the future and the current factors that I think those are the things that plague my mind as far as nonprofit futures.
I love both of those. They're very business focused issues, which I love because it's one of the things that nonprofits have to see is we are businesses, right? And the commercial economy directly impacts nonprofits. So gone are the days where we were these auxiliary organizations driven by volunteers. You're hitting on both those points, Michael. Okay, Diana, how about you?
Yes. So one of the critical factors, I mean, here just in Houston, for example, there's Chevron, for example, a big oil company who is buying out another oil company. So instead of having two donors, we're losing one. And if you were to, if I was to say it that way, but we're seeing it as, yes, what the economy with what the inflation, everything that's going on, not only is it going to affect businesses, but it's also affecting individuals and, how they're budgeting their giving and how they're budgeting their home finances. But I think one of the very important factors to think about is that individuals don't understand that they can give their time and give, of how they can support the organizations that they truly believe in. And sometimes they don't make that connection of what I've been through or what they've gone through or what someone close to them has gone through and the skills that they have, the network that they have, and just donating their time. I think that people don't understand that, or a lot of individuals not in the nonprofit sector don't understand that they don't just have to give financially, they can also give of their time, that they can also connect with organizations that are close to them, because it's benefiting not only them and their community, their children, but it's also going to affect and benefit the next generation and the generations to come. But giving that awareness and partnerships is also, I believe, one of the factors that just here in Houston is like over 15,000 nonprofit organizations. And, we need partnerships. We need partnerships with individuals. We need partnerships with those not in the nonprofit sector as well.
Absolutely. It's still connections and partnerships. And I totally understand your sentiment of the business sector. Again, when they merge, that economy affects us directly. So volunteerism, always the heart, it's the heart of the nonprofit sector. So Byron, what are you thinking about from the United Way worldwide these days?
Yeah, I'm thinking about several things. One of them is this idea around next generation leaders, loosely affiliated with this last conversation and comment. We're launching a program, a cohort actually later this year called Next Gen Leaders, as we look at the aging population of the workforce, those folks that are in leadership roles or in staff roles across the board. And I think that doesn't just apply to United Ways. It applies to the entire corporate sector and nonprofit sector and government sector across the board. So that's one thing that's top of mind. The second is, I'll just call it, even though we're a nonpartisan organization, politics in this country will continue to create challenges for nonprofits going forward, whether that's issues-based or whether that structure, it feeds into compensation. There are some states in the country that are looking to pass legislation and laws around how much money like a superintendent could make as a school district or how much a nonprofit executive should generate as compensation. And I put in the chat earlier, oftentimes the skills that are required to lead a nonprofit, many of us could translate directly to business, but oftentimes business executives have difficulty translating in the other direction to the nonprofit space, other than functional areas like finance or marketing, where that's an easy translation, but the human side and human element of what we do. So the political landscape would be the second one I mentioned. And then the third is this notion of community resiliency. For us, that's captured under environment, climate, and as we think about the challenges of what we don't know could happen at any given time, a COVID that takes place and requires a totally different type of leadership. Maui be devastated by a series of fires and the entire landscape change, and the nonprofit sector having to rally and may not even be fully staffed to do that. I'll use this one example. We have 4 staff at the time in our Maui United Way, but yet we were tasked with collecting the majority of the funds across the state and from around the country to really deploy in real time. And so we had to dispatch staff in a way to support them separate and apart from what FEMA and the Red Cross do. And our folks are still on the ground helping do that work. But that's not something we planned for. It's not something we could predict was going to happen. But what we knew is that the skill set would be needed. So having a deep enough talent pool that you can deploy folks to address issues as they arise. And there will be more things like that, unfortunately, that will happen that we just will not know. But if you have the skill set like this credential that's transferable, you're better poised and positioned to be effective in the marketplace to affect change and outcomes than someone who may not be. So those are a few things that are top of mind for me for the sector.
All of those resonate with me, really. I know I was working more closely with Debbie when the pandemic hit, and the way that food banks had to adapt quickly. Disasters are affecting us so many more safety net issues than just the fire itself. Used to it was the Red Cross went out and we were all good. And it's so much more now. And so I really appreciate your take on that. And then next generation leaders. There's always a next generation. Those aren't programs that end, right? We're always grooming that next generation. So, okay, Debbie, hit me.
So I'm going to tie, I think, a couple of concepts that were talked about by the other panelists together for what's been on top of my mind with regards to the broader nonprofit sector and collaborative space. But from the standpoint of strength as business entities, in order to ensure that our work can sustain over a long period of time, even though I've been in the nonprofit sector for pretty much all of my career, I've been blessed serving on national boards of directors from a young age with business professionals in the corporate world that really taught me that in order to have a sustainable nonprofit, you shall run it like a business. Because even though we are helping people, there still is a bottom line. You're either ending in the black or you're ending in the red. And if you're ending in the red year over year over year over year, being a nonprofit is no excuse because you're helping people, because it means that your nonprofit's going to be gone tomorrow. And so what did you do to that community? You were there, you were providing services, and because you weren't managing your nonprofit like a business that ends in the black, the people that depended on your organization all of a sudden are seeing you leave, just like everybody else in their life pretty much has left, putting them into the situation. So I've always held that as one of the key principles of leadership in the nonprofit space when it comes to how do you work with your organization to ensure that it's fulfilling its mission, not just for today, but for as long as that community needs you to be there for them as it ebbs and changes and flows. But it also means that we have to have a higher awareness of whether or not the services that we're putting into the community are needed. Are we losing ground because we don't know how, as an organization, to change who we are to the community as the community continues to change? Are we looking at collaborative spaces in the community, people that may be doing something better than what we're doing? And so do we divert attention to them in order to strengthen what they're doing, in order to make sure that this, it is not an endless supply of donor money. We have a tight pool that's going on right now, especially when economies fall and change. Can we give up ego of our own organization to realize that there may be somebody that's doing it better than us? And maybe it's us being a collaborative partner with them in order to strengthen the programs that they're doing, but be able to give it a trajectory of growth and width to be able to serve more by what we can bring to the table for what it is that we do well. I think we miss that in the space of the nonprofit sector. everybody thinks that they have a great new idea a lot of the times, but have they really done the research to see is somebody else already doing it out there that maybe we should be partnering with, as opposed to launching a new nonprofit organization and drawing down on funds that are already spread so thin? Stanford Social Innovation did a really great research study on this, I think about 5 years ago, that really captured, I think, is it about merging? Is it about creating new? Is it about collaborative spaces in order for us to be able to fulfill our missions as nonprofits together as a community, as opposed to isolation, because we have ego coming into the space about our nonprofit, trying to raise the most money, being the biggest nonprofit, all of that kind of stuff, right? That's what I foresee. I think the nonprofit sector can do better moving forward into the future, is how do we make sure that we're working together in collaborative spaces and not trying to reinvent the wheel all the time, in order to make sure that we have the ability to grow and change with the communities and be able to provide services that the communities need and want.
That's great. So I echo all of those, and I will add something that I've been thinking a lot about is AI and the nonprofit sector, and the really early effects that we've been seeing on it, and the very positive implications, but also some of the alarming implications to our sector and how we're going to embrace it. And those issues, I just read a fascinating article yesterday about AI in the humanities on college campuses, and how it's really upending their theoretical basis. And there was a real call to say, we're not going to do AI in the humanities because it takes the human out of what we teach. So I think there's a lot of big picture things that we're going to have to grapple with as the nonprofit sector. And I hope that we do it sooner rather than later. We sometimes wait to see how other organizations are going to handle big shifts like that. And I don't know that we have time to do that with something that's so core to us, which is serving people. So that's something I'm really watching for a lot as well. This has been absolutely fascinating. And I think we come from such 5 different places, journeys. We've ended up in 5 really different places, and there's some really fabulous common threads. So here are my 3 that I heard that I hope we can all think on and maybe write on and share on after today. I think a big one was connection. It's partnerships, collaborations, networks, well-being. I'm going to stick with that because I think a lot of well-being is about connection and self-reflection as a form of connection. So I think connection is one of my big takeaways here. There are workforce issues that we all are thinking about. That's my number 2. And we talked about it in a lot of different ways. So pay parity, next generation leadership, resiliency skills, all of those things are critical. And the pipeline, I worry a lot about the workforce pipeline. That's huge where I sit. So I'll add that one to the list. And then finally, this over and over again, what we said was lean on what you learned as a CNP. It's this core set of management, leadership, principles, practices that you've known since for all of us. Well, for most of us anyway, it was while we were still getting our college degrees or our master's degrees. So those core things that we learned in our CNP are still serving us well, and we need to stick with those. Thank you so much, sincerely. Thank you to all 4 of you. And I wish we could go have a beer. I wish we were all in Kansas City and could follow this up with a little downtime, continue the conversation, but I'll connect with you in a different way, I guess. So Dorothy, again, thank you, and team, thank you for giving us space to have such a powerful conversation today as our gift to celebrating the CNP.
Thank you so much, Susan, Debbie, Michael, Byron, and Diana, for sharing your experience and insight with us. I'm going to be thinking about these things for a long time to come and appreciate the time you spent with us today.